The dense British mist often wraps the ancient stones of Gloucestershire in a quiet, almost reverent stillness, concealing the deep histories and unspoken narratives that unfold behind the high gates of the realm's grandest estates. For years, the rolling hills and meticulous gardens of Highgrove House have served as a sanctuary from the relentless glare of the global spotlight, a place where the private realities of a modern dynasty are shielded from the insatiable curiosity of the public. Within these secluded boundaries, history is not just preserved in portraits and manicured lawns, but is actively lived through the complex web of family ties, unvoiced longings, and the heavy burden of hereditary expectations. To understand the gravity of what transpires within such walls, one must look beyond the immediate headlines and appreciate the profound weight of time, distance, and the deep emotional currents that run beneath the surface of royal life. Every stone in this landscape seems to whisper of past triumphs and enduring fractures, creating an atmosphere where every single meeting carries an undeniable historical weight. It is against this backdrop of quiet grandeur and unspoken tension that a new chapter begins to unfold, one that draws its strength from years of separation and the ultimate, undeniable pull of bloodlines that refuse to be completely severed by geography or circumstance. The world watches from a distance, fascinated by the silent shifts in power and affection that define the modern monarchy, recognizing that behind the formal protocol lies a human story of profound complexity. If you wish to remain informed about these deep, evolving narratives and explore the hidden layers of contemporary history, consider subscribing to this channel to follow every development as it happens. The story of this family has always been one of dramatic contrasts, balancing the ultimate heights of public adulation with the deeply isolating realities of private exile across a vast ocean. When the decision was made years ago to forge a completely independent path far from the historic palaces of London, few could have truly anticipated how wide the physical and emotional gulf would eventually become. The sun-drenched coast of Southern California, with its promise of freedom, privacy, and a brand new identity, stood in stark and absolute opposition to the centuries-old traditions and structured expectations of the British court. For the young children growing up in the quiet enclave of Montecito, the grand palaces, the glittering crowns, and the historic titles were not daily realities, but rather distant stories from a world left behind by their parents. They grew up surrounded by the whisper of the Pacific tides rather than the formalized protocols of royal life, establishing a unique existence that was entirely separate from the legacy of their ancestors. Yet, no matter how many thousands of miles of ocean and continent separate a family, the invisible threads of lineage and heritage remain extraordinarily powerful, exerting a constant quiet pressure on everyone involved. The passage of time does not erase the fundamental connections of birth, and as the months turned into years, the absence of a shared physical space became an increasingly poignant element of their collective narrative. The public could only speculate about the true nature of the conversations taking place across multiple time zones, wondering if the immense distance would permanently crystallize into an unbridgeable divide or if a moment of profound reconciliation was quietly waiting on the horizon. To fully grasp the current atmosphere of anticipation, one must look back to the summer of 22, a monumental period when the entire kingdom was united in celebration of a historic milestone. That was the very last time the youngest members of this lineage set foot on British soil, arriving amidst an extraordinary whirlwind of national pageantry, public celebration, and intense media scrutiny. The grand celebration of a historic reign brought family members together from all corners of the globe, creating a brilliant, glittering tapestry of public appearances and formal events that masked the underlying personal dynamics. During that brief and intense period, the children were able to experience the sheer scale of their heritage, witnessing firsthand the profound connection between their family and the collective identity of an entire nation. However, the private interactions during that momentous visit were brief and heavily shielded from the public eye, leaving an enduring sense of unfinished business and unfulfilled potential for deeper personal connection. After those intense days of public celebration concluded, the family returned to their quiet sanctuary in California, and the heavy curtain of distance fell once more, remaining firmly closed for nearly 4 years. In the intervening years, the world changed dramatically, roles were fundamentally redefined, and the passing of time left an undeniable mark on both the older and younger generations alike. The young prince and princess grew from infants into observant children, developing their own personalities and understandings of the world, entirely removed from the immediate presence of their paternal grandfather. Meanwhile, In the heart of the United Kingdom, the responsibilities of leadership and the natural progression of time brought about a profound shift in perspective for the head of the house. The weight of an ancient crown brings with it a deep understanding of legacy, not just in terms of institutional survival, but in the intensely personal terms of family continuity and the passing of generational wisdom. As the years progressed, the desire to connect with the furthest branches of the family tree grew more profound, hidden behind the daily demands of statecraft and public duty. The quiet moments at Highgrove House, a residence renowned for its beautiful organic gardens and peaceful atmosphere, often provided the perfect setting for reflection on the true meaning of legacy and family. For a grandfather, the growth of grandchildren whom he could only observe through occasional digital updates or distant photographs represented a poignant reminder of the relentless march of time. Every year that passed without a physical embrace was a year lost to history, a reality that weighed heavily on a man who has spent his entire life acutely aware of his place in the long, unbroken line of succession. The complexity of arranging such a meeting, given the immense logistical hurdles, security concerns, and the relentless attention of the global media, often made the prospect seem distant and almost impossible to realize. Yet, the underlying desire for a genuine private connection remained a powerful guiding force, setting the stage for a dramatic and unexpected series of events that would eventually capture the imagination of millions around the world. The logistical arrangements required to facilitate a journey of this magnitude across the Atlantic Ocean were fraught with immense tension, sudden reversals, and a level of security planning that rivaled major international summits. For months, the question of whether the entire family would make the perilous journey from their quiet coastal enclave in Southern California to the historic heart of England hung in a delicate balance. Early in the summer, whispers began to circulate through the highest echelons of the media that a grand summer reunion was being planned, sparking a wave of intense global anticipation and speculation. The prospect of the young prince and princess returning to British soil for the first time in 4 long years created a storm of excitement, but behind the scenes, a fierce battle was being waged over the fundamental issue of safety. In the modern era, the protection of high-profile individuals who have stepped away from official institutional roles presents an incredibly complex legal and financial puzzle. When the authorities ultimately decided that taxpayer-funded security would not be provided for the family during their private stay, the entire meticulously planned itinerary was suddenly thrown into absolute chaos. The devastating news fell like a heavy hammer at the 11th hour, forcing the family to abruptly scrap their initial travel plans, leaving their close friends, relatives, and numerous charitable organizations deeply disappointed and completely stranded. The sudden cancellation exposed the raw vulnerabilities and deep fractures that continue to define the relationship between the independent couples and the traditional structures of the realm they left behind. Sources close to the family revealed that the Duke of Sussex was deeply devastated by the ruling, feeling that his primary, sacred duty to protect his wife and young children from potential harm had been completely undermined by administrative decisions. For weeks, he actively explored every single alternative option, consulting with top-tier international security experts and legal advisors to find a foolproof method to guarantee their absolute safety on British soil. The stakes could not have been higher, as any public appearance or even a private transit would inevitably attract an immense army of photographers, onlookers, and potential security threats. Faced with an apparently unbridgeable impasse, the Duke made the agonizing decision to travel to the United Kingdom entirely alone at first, leaving his family behind in the secure confines of their California estate. His arrival in London earlier in the week was marked by a heavy, somber atmosphere as he attended to his long-standing charitable commitments, including the momentous launch of the countdown for the upcoming 27 Invictus Games in Birmingham. The public watched his solitary appearances, convinced that the dream of a grand family reunion had been permanently shattered by the cold realities of security protocols and official regulations. Yet, behind this public facade of disappointment and separation, a secret operation was quietly being put into motion to achieve the seemingly impossible. While the Duke was fulfilling his public duties and generating headlines across the nation, intense, private negotiations were taking place to arrange a highly secure, entirely private window of opportunity for his family to join him. By the middle of the week, the atmosphere shifted dramatically from despair to frantic preparation as a high-stakes decision was made to fly the Duchess and the 2 children across the ocean under a thick veil of total secrecy. The sheer coordination required to move a globally recognizable mother and two young royal children across international borders without alerting the voracious British press was an extraordinary feat of modern logistics. Private airfields, unmarked transport vehicles, and hand-picked security personnel who operated completely outside the public apparatus were utilized to ensure their safe arrival on British soil. When the family finally touched down, the sense of relief among their inner circle was palpable, but the tension remained incredibly high as they prepared for the most emotionally significant leg of their secret journey. They were not here for public acclaim, grand balcony appearances, or glittering media events. Their sole, absolute focus was a deeply private destination hidden deep within the verdant countryside of Gloucestershire. The journey from their secure landing point to Highgrove House was conducted with the precision of a military operation, avoiding major highways and public hubs to maintain the essential element of surprise and total privacy. Highgrove, the cherished private country residence of the king, has long been a place of profound personal meaning, featuring magnificent gardens that have been painstakingly cultivated over many decades. It is a place where the monarch feels most truly himself, surrounded by nature and the peaceful rhythms of rural life, far removed from the cold formality of Buckingham Palace or the historical burdens of Windsor Castle. As the unmarked security convoy approached the heavy iron gates of the estate on that momentous Friday, the collective anxiety of 4 years of separation began to give way to an overwhelming sense of historical gravity. The king and the queen had cleared their demanding royal schedules entirely, ensuring that this specific day would be kept completely sacred for an event that many feared would never happen during their lifetimes. The grand doors of the country house stood open to welcome the young prince, now 7 years old, and the princess, now 5, who were about to step into a world that was part of their fundamental heritage, yet entirely foreign to their daily lives. Inside the quiet rooms of Highgrove, away from the prying eyes of lenses and the endless analysis of the global public, the long-awaited meeting finally commenced, instantly shifting the atmosphere from high-stakes tension to profound human emotion. The sheer contrast between the high-pressure geopolitical and legal battles that precede Script and the simple, quiet reality of a grandfather embracing his distant grandchildren created an incredibly powerful dynamic. For 4 long years, their relationship had been reduced to fleeting digital screens and distant updates, a fragmented connection that could never replace the warmth of physical presence and shared moments. Now, within the secure, peaceful walls of the Gloucestershire estate, the passage of time seemed to telescope, bringing the past and the future into a sharp, immediate focus. The little princess, who was a mere infant during her last brief visit to the kingdom, and her older brother stood in the presence of a monarch who, to them, was simply a grandfather eager to know their voices, their laughter, and their personalities. The absolute privacy of the reunion was fiercely guarded, with an explicit understanding that no photographs, official statements, or public disclosures would be allowed to compromise the sacred nature of the family space. This deliberate choice to withhold visual confirmation from the world only heightened the profound sense of drama and mystery surrounding the event, leaving the public to ponder the deep emotional work that was taking place behind the closed doors of Highgrove House. The profound silence that followed the historic gathering at Highgrove House spoke louder than any official press release or carefully worded statement from the palace walls. In the grand tapestry of royal history, the true turning points are rarely accompanied by the fanfare of trumpets or the flashing lights of global media, but rather unfold in the quiet, unscripted moments shared between generations. As the initial emotional intensity of the reunion began to settle into a gentle rhythm, the family was able to experience something that had eluded them for nearly half a decade: a sense of normal, uninterrupted connection far removed from their public identities. The young prince and princess spent precious hours exploring the winding pathways of the estate, walking through the very gardens that their grandfather had spent a lifetime nurturing with his own hands. For the sovereign, this encounter was not merely a brief pause in a demanding schedule of state, but a profound validation of the enduring power of family. An opportunity to look into the eyes of his youngest descendants and see the living continuation of his own personal lineage. The hours spent together allowed for the sharing of simple stories, the exchange of long overdue gifts, and the creation of foundational memories that will undoubtedly shape the children's understanding of their heritage as they grow older. It was a clear demonstration that beneath the immense weight of institutional obligations and historical fractures, The fundamental human desire for reconciliation and familial love remains an incredibly powerful force capable of rewriting the narrative of a dynasty. The significance of this journey, however, extended far beyond the boundary walls of Gloucestershire, tracing a path through the deep emotional landscape of the family's shared history and the enduring memory of those who came before. Following the momentous encounter at Highgrove, the family set out on a deeply personal pilgrimage to a site that holds an almost sacred status in the heart of the Duke and the collective memory of the British public. Nestled within the rolling green expanses of Northamptonshire lies the historic Althorpe Estate, the ancestral home of the Spencer family and the final resting place of the late Princess of Wales. For the Duke, bringing his young children to this secluded island sanctuary was a moment of profound spiritual and emotional completion, a way to connect the memory of his beloved mother with the young lives he has so fiercely protected. The quiet waters surrounding the burial site reflected the somber, respectful mood of the family as they stood together in the stillness of the afternoon, paying tribute to a legacy that continues to cast a long, definitive shadow over their lives. For the Duchess, standing beside her husband at this historic location represented a powerful reaffirmation of their shared journey, a quiet moment of reflection on the sacrifices made and the independent path they have forged together across the sea. This private pilgrimage served as a reminder that while the family may have stepped away from the official structures of the monarchy, their deep personal connections to the history and the people of the land remain entirely unbroken. The extraordinary efforts undertaken to make this entire trip a reality shed a definitive light on the complex, evolving nature of the family's life in the modern world. When the Duke and Duchess made the earth-shattering decision to step back from their senior royal duties years ago, they effectively entered uncharted territory, attempting to balance global philanthropy with an absolute right to private family life. The fierce battles over security funding, the intense media speculation, and the logistical challenges that marked the build-up to this trip are a testament to the unique, high-stakes environment in which they must operate. Yet, by successfully navigating these immense hurdles to facilitate a historic reunion, they have demonstrated a profound resilience and a willingness to prioritize personal healing over institutional rigidity. The journey highlights a significant shift in perspective, suggesting that after years of public distance and vocal disagreements, there is a mutual, deeply felt desire to build bridges and ensure that the younger generation is not permanently isolated from their paternal roots. As the family prepared to depart the United Kingdom and return to their quiet, sun-drenched sanctuary in Montecito, they carried with them a completely renewed sense of connection and a treasure trove of shared experiences that will sustain them across the miles. The long-awaited crossing of the pond proved that while the physical distance between California and London remains vast, the emotional distance can be bridged when there is a shared willingness to embrace the quiet power of reconciliation. As the heavy gates of Highgrove House closed once more, and the family began their quiet journey back across the Atlantic Ocean, the global public was left to contemplate the true long-term implications of this monumental weekend. The absence of public photographs or official television footage did nothing to diminish the profound impact of the event. If anything, the absolute secrecy surrounding the meeting elevated its significance, transforming it from a mere media spectacle into a genuine historic milestone of personal reconciliation. The world has watched this family navigate the ultimate heights of public adulation and the deepest valleys of personal conflict, and this quiet reunion offers a powerful, hopeful glimmer of a more peaceful, unified future. It reminds us that behind the grand palaces, the glittering crowns, and the endless headlines that dominate the modern media landscape, there are real human beings trying to find their way back to one another through the fog of time and misunderstanding. The young prince and princess will return to their lives in California with a completely new understanding of the world across the sea, knowing that they are cherished by a grandfather who happens to wear a crown, but who is, above all, a man devoted to the continuity of his family. The story of this modern dynasty is far from finished, and while challenges and uncertainties will undoubtedly arise in the years to come, the quiet triumph of this weekend in Gloucestershire has rewritten the narrative, proving that the ultimate pull of family can overcome